This is Jim Williams with the Hurricane City Tropical Update for August 29th, 12 noon. Here's the Hurricane Earl forecast track from the National Hurricane Center using the close-up, zoomed-in hurricane tracking map at Hurricane City. And you can see we have Hurricane Earl approaching the northern Leeward Islands. This is going to pass either north or just over the island of St. Martin. That's our current feature at Hurricane City. And you can use the link next to the tracking chart and get all the localized information from St. Martin as this passes through. Now, we're going to leave up radio and some radar and cams and whatnot on the live feed at hurricanecity.tv. There will not be a hurricane warning show on this system due to the fact that most of the highest winds should remain just north of the islands as it passes by. In fact, the Hurricane Watch Net is not even activated for this. So we're not doing a hurricane warning show. We'll watch this closely, see if it has any impact on any other land masses. But it looks like this will become a major hurricane north of Puerto Rico on Tuesday and then begin to make the turn to the north, according to the model data, and start to make the turn out to the northeast. Now, the cone of error does include the Outer Banks of the Mid-Atlantic coast, so we'll watch that closely. But all models right now indicate this is going to recurve out into the North Atlantic. Here is the model runs on Hurricane Earl, and you can see that there's a pretty strong consensus. They're tightly clustered here, and once they get up in the mid-Atlantic, it's pretty much splitting the uprights between Bermuda and the U.S. and then beginning to curve out to the northeast. And here's the consensus, all the group models from the HurTrack program, and there's about maybe 15 models here all clustered together tightly. The recurve happens, and then the only landmass that may get a direct impact from this would be Newfoundland, rather. So we'll have to watch that closely, and we'll cover that if it's a tropical system up that way. Now here's the close-up, zoomed-in version of the HurTrack program showing the closest point of approach to St. Martin, and that'll be tomorrow morning around 9 a.m. Now inside the yellow circle are gusts to tropical storm force, but the aqua circle is what matters. These are sustained tropical storm force winds over the island of St. Martin. And the red circle are sustained hurricane force winds. And again, that looks like the island of Anguilla and maybe north of St. Martin. Maybe St. Martin might get some gust of hurricane force, but it looks like the worst of this, the right front quadrant, is going to remain just north of the islands as this moves off to the west-northwest. Here are the intensity models on Hurricane Earl. And you'll notice that the HWFI, let me go ahead and illustrate that one here. The WFI model indicates that this will be a flirt with Category 3, actually become a Category 3, and then after 72 hours it begins to weaken, and that's probably due to the fast forward speed and the shear expected off the coast of the U.S. by the time it gets up that way. Now the other good model, performing model, is the DRCL model, and that has this up near Category 5 status in about 72 hours. Amazing. And then it drops off significantly as it gets into the mid-Atlantic area between Bermuda and the U.S. So we'll see what happens with the weakening, but there's an obvious trend here with the models that there's going to be weakening after 72 to 96 hours. All the strengthening is going to happen while it's south of 30 degrees north. And both the DRCL model, by the way, is a Demari Radii Clipper model, which is a climate and persistence model. And the HWFI is the basic, different version of the HWRF, but that has interpolated information, which is additional information put into the model. So these are the best two, only off by about 5 knots over the entire journey so far of Earl. So they've done very good on intensity, but not very good on the direction of movement on this system at all. Here are the late cycle models. Early cycle models rather, and again you see that the aviation ensemble models here, you have a situation where they're expecting, in fact the GFDI model, which is a version of GFDN rather, which is a version of the GFDL interpolated, has this getting up near Category 5 status and then quickly weakens after that once it gets up near the mid-Atlantic in about 96 hours. So again, there's a trend of weakening here as it gets into cooler waters, shear, and fast forward speed after 96 hours. Here is the best performing model so far on Earl. Now this is not saying much because quite frankly the models have been horrible with Earl. In fact, they're off by an average of about 500 or so miles over the 5 to 6 days we've been tracking this system. But this is the best of the worst actually. This is the AP10 model off by about 238 nautical miles, but this clearly has the gap shot between Bermuda and the U.S. and recurving harmlessly out into the open Atlantic. Let's hope that that's what happens without affecting any land masses. But it also has this well north of the Leewards, and I think that's going to be wrong right out of the gates. We're talking about a system that's going to be passing right through this area down here and then making the turn, so this is already off. But it is the best performing model on Earl. And what storms in history have been in the same exact position, and where did they go and what did they do? Well, there's 3 storms that really stand out that were in this position between August 28th and August 30th in the same exact position that Earl is in. Carmen in 1974 did a number like this on the Yucatan and Louisiana. Hurricane Frederick, 1979, belted Alabama. And Hurricane Donna was in this position, went through the northern Leeward Islands, bent to the west through the Bahamas, and went right through the Florida Keys and right up the Florida Peninsula. It did a lot of damage. The other ones were fish storms. Dog and Arthur and a couple of others here. Another unnamed storm in 1899. Actually, the 1899 storm did affect Bermuda up here before going out to sea. But pretty rich hurricane history of storms that have been in this exact position exactly at this time of the year. Now, here's a webcam from St. Bart's, which is just southeast of St. Martin, our current feature. And look at the webcam, the nice clear skies. There's really not a whole heck of a lot going on there right now because it's actually, if we pull up a radar, you can see there's the latest image from the radar, and you can see the bands beginning to approach, but there's good sinking air out in front of hurricanes. That's pretty typical. When they're approaching hurricane, you're going to have pretty good weather. Here's another cam from Great Bay, which is on the south side of St. Martin. Smooth seas, blue skies. And here's another shot from St. Bart's. Notice the mountainous, the hilly region here. I'm going to get to that in just a minute on why this might not be that bad for those islands. And here is a layout of the islands, and if you can see, let me zoom in on this for you. And then you can see that it's really hilly terrain here and mountainous terrain. And when you have a situation like this, the wind funnels in between these mountains. So if you're in the higher terrain, you're going to get some of those hurricane force gusts, but the lower terrain areas may not really get that much high wind out of this because of the fact that the air is, generally when you have a Category 1 hurricane, the winds, it's tough for them to mix down to the surface, especially in the lower elevations down in here. But in the higher elevations, yes, you're going to get some higher winds up there, some gusts, maybe 80 or 90 miles an hour as this passes off to the north. But, just interesting, while I have this image up, a little bit of information about this island. The islands are pretty crowded. There's pretty high population there. You're talking in St. Martin, about 50,000 people live in the northern part of the island. And 3,800 live in St. Bart's off to the southeast. And about over 100,000 people a year visit this island. It's a very famous tourist port. Also, they have a lake in here. This lake, this may be the lake. I might be wrong on that, but there's a lake in here right there that flooded during Hurricane, Hurricane Lenny back in 1999, and it can overflow and get into these neighborhoods and stuff in hurricane conditions. So we'll have to watch for that with Hurricane Earl, but it doesn't look like this is not nearly as intense as Lenny was. Lenny was Category 4, moving off to the northeast. On the south side is the Dutch side, and the power grid is not as good down on the south side of St. Martin. Anyway, salt is the big business down there. That's where they make their living, and tourism, of course, in the island of St. Martin. All right, here are the models on Invest 97L. There's another system out in the East Atlantic we're keeping an eye on. This will become Fiona, and the model guidance again indicates that this could pass just north of the Puerto Rico and the Leeward Islands, just similar to what Earl is going to do. But interestingly, the European model is indicating that this could be a threat to the southeastern United States. Yesterday, the run showed it going into South Carolina. Today, it's going into the central Florida coastline. So we're going to have to watch for trends on the Euro. The Euro is a very good model, and long range indicates this could affect Florida. But the early, most of the generic, general global models and tropical models indicate a turn here following Hurricane Earl, because they think it's going to catch up to Earl and get caught in that same weakness. Here are the intensity models on Fiona, or Invest 97L, and the best performing Well, actually, we don't have the best performing on that, but the general consensus is Category 1 status, and then they're all over the place, kind of scattered as what's going to happen when it gets near the Leeward Islands over here. But basically, Cat 1, Cat 2. Here's the best performer on Invest 97L. This is the AP04 Aviation Ensemble model. Again, this is only off by about 25 miles so far on Earl. So this is having its coming very similar to what Earl is doing, almost basically right over the northern Leeward Islands and then continuing off to the west-northwest. So we'll watch that closely. This is the best performer so far on Invest 97L. All right, let's take a look at the floater loop. Let's take a look at a floater of Invest 97L out here in the Atlantic. I don't know why the National Hurricane Center has not labeled this system yet. It's perplexing to me, but look at the rotation on this. It looks like it's already a tropical depression, so I expect advisories to be initiated at any time, and then we'll have a much better handle on where this is going to go. But this is cruising off to the west pretty fast, and what's concerning is it seems like it's just moving a little bit south to due west, and that could have implications down the road for the impacts on the northern Leeward Islands. So we're going to have to watch this one very closely. And again, that Euro is indicating that this could be a threat to the United States down the road. So everybody needs to pay attention to what will become Fiona. All right, here's the AVN shot of Hurricane Earl approaching the northern Leeward Islands. Again, there's deep convection. The center is probably right about where my mouse pointer is somewhere. But again, the worst winds are on the northeast quad, and they will pass probably north of the islands as this passes through. But we'll keep track of it. Now here is the loop of the entire Atlantic Basin, the vapor loop, and let's find out what's happening here. All right, first of all, we had this area disturbed weather yesterday in the northern Gulf. That's wrapped in an upper level low now moving inland. There's some rain coming into the northern Gulf Coast, but that is not going to develop. Here is Earl on the move toward the northern Leeward Islands. But look what's happening here. Here's here's Danielle, Hurricane Danielle, moving quickly off to the northeast. And what's replacing it? This big trough down here. And this is what's going to pick up Hurricane Earl and take it off to the northeast, and it's going to follow Danielle out in the North Atlantic. And the question remains, what's going to happen after Earl exits stage right? Is there a high-pressure ridge that's going to build in up here? Is it going to steer Fiona into the southeast, anywhere here? What's going to happen with Fiona? We just don't know yet. We have a long time to watch this, but it is something that's concerning the long-range Euro model, and we have to keep a close eye on that because that could have huge implications down the road. Well, that's it for now. I'll be back with another update tomorrow on this situation. Watch HurricaneCity.tv for the latest on Hurricane Earl as it approaches the northern Leeward Islands. Thank you again for visiting Hurricane City.